Welcome to the Amy Lorentz, Gerrard Hoeschler Real Estate Pregame Show. Rick Franke with head coach Tom Yashinsky as we get sent for a big battle against the McFarland Spartans. Yes, it's the first road game of the season, but what we want to do is start a little bit with talking about the legendary UWL Eagles head coach Roger Herring, who's having his memorial this weekend. And Coach, I know you have a few words you wanted to say about the legendary coach. Just got done watching a great special on WXOW. They did a fantastic job with it, and boy, what a man who really touched a lot of hearts and a lot of people in this area.
Yeah, thanks, Rick. Nick Herring is one of our freshman coaches. Nick is Roger's grandson, and Roger meant so much to Nick as Roger would actually come to our freshman games on a pretty regular basis, and Nick would call Coach Herring before and after game and talk about him. So I know that Nick is hurting right now, and I think that the overwhelming support that he's going to see this weekend at Coach Herring's memorial service and funeral is something that's really going to just give him an idea of the impact that Coach Herring had in our area, and that impact in our area and how it spread throughout the entire state. So our condolences to the Herring family, to Coach Nick Herring, who's on our staff, and everybody. But you talk about a man who really made an impact in the Cooley region of football, and you see all of the men that went to UWL and came out of that program as head coaches, and it started with Coach Roger Herring, and it spread on then to Larry Terry's staff, and from there, just a huge pouring of men that have made an impact in the lives of other young men. And it all started with one guy, with Coach Herring. So our condolences to the Herring family, but at the same time celebrating the man that he was and the impact that he left in this area and how that spread throughout the state. So I just appreciate a moment to reflect on that and talk about his impact.
Absolutely, a true legend, and couldn't have said it any better, Tom. All right, let's talk about last week's game. I know you don't want to spend a lot of time on this. Obviously, you guys spent a lot of time in practice this week trying to make some adjustments. Very first game of the season. We knew coming in some changes on the offensive line, changes on the defensive line. You got a couple of superstars at wide receiver moving on to their college years, and a change in the backfield to what we had last year. So a lot of changes. Now, I want to get your take first off on what your thoughts were about those changes, how the team performed. We can obviously go through the scoreboard and rehash that, but this was a game I thought that we kind of had. We could win it, even though we gave up a lot more yards than we put up in that matchup.
Yeah, and it really was, there, like we talked about on Monday with the kids. It was a game of individual plays that we make any single one of those individual plays, and we win the game. So it a lot of different things that happened. I wish we would have got a couple more first downs. I think if we get a couple more first downs, we win that game. I thought we played really well on special teams up until that last play. Great kick return. We had a punt block. We played super well on special teams. We didn't handle the onside kick the way that we wanted. Obviously something we worked on this week a lot. At times youth showed. The heat definitely got to us as the game grew longer. We had a lot of chances to put it away and didn't do so, and because of that, the game extended, and that heat made a bigger impact with cramps and things like that. So a lot of things that we wanted to clean up this week, but mostly we talked about how we were going to respond when stuff doesn't go our way. Last week we saw too many hands up in the air, too many hands on helmets, not enough picking each other up, and that was a point of emphasis this week. Was we talked about and I know Pete, who we'll get to later, knows about E plus R equals O, but we talked about we can't control the E, we can't control events. We have 100% control over the R, which is our response, and because of that, that influences the O, which is the outcome. We needed to have a better R in a lot of those situations. When something bad happened, we needed to respond in a way that people were going to rally around, not have a negative response it started a chain reaction of things falling apart. So big emphasis. That was the emphasis all week. That was the emphasis tonight at the Rock, and it's kind of our emphasis going forward is how are we going to respond when things don't go our way, and how are we going to pick each other up rather than walk away from our teammates. So
And typically we have the running game that kind of opens up that passing game. And I thought Sean Gillis, when he did run the football, when he wasn't cramping and he was out there, he was looking real good with the football. But, if you look at the number of rushes we had in that game, that's far lower than what you'll normally see in a Hilltopper game.
Yeah, we want to run the ball a lot better than that. And we actually, Sean's not going to start on defense this week because of that. Like we wanted, we know his value as a running back is incredibly high. So Adam Skifton will start on defense, who played really well coming in for Sean when he was in there on defense. So Adam's going to get the start there, and that should allow us to rep Sean for a lot more carries than what he got on Friday night going forward. So yeah, we got to get better up front. We know that. We knew that going into that game. We had to get better up front. We had a pretty good week of practice. So we're hoping it comes together for us.
Let's talk about McFarland. That's the opponent tonight. And obviously they got off to a rough start too, playing Lodi. And, I know that they wanted to move the football a little bit better and have a little bit more possession. And obviously that didn't seem to work out much in the running game and not a whole lot in the passing game. So what do you think about this matchup? And then I think we got to bring Pete in, because Pete can talk a little bit more to the fact of what happened against Lodi. And, just to kind of let people know, we don't normally have an offensive coordinator from the opposition on during the coaches show, but Pete Williquette is not only the offensive coordinator for the McFarland Spartans, but he also was your roommate in college and is currently married to your ex-girlfriend.
Yep, there's a lot of layers to this one. So, that McFarland with Lodi there. Lodi is the team that's won state titles, multiple state titles in the last 10 years. They are a program that has had the same coaching staff for a really long time. They've had a ton of success. It seems like every year it's the same last names, just different ages of those kids in those jerseys. That are really successful. So I don't think you can look at that and say that's indicative of the team we're facing, because Lodi, I think, is ranked third in Division 4. You're going to see them at the end of the season in that bracket towards, in the final 8, final 4, whatever it is. And I know McFarland's young and coming off of quite a interesting school year in Dane County. So there's a lot of layers to that one as well. But this is going to be a fun one because of the last part that you mentioned. Pete and I go back to 2007. We were student coaches with Larry Terry at UWL. We have a lot of the same mentors. We have a lot of the same friends. We survived a interception of a girlfriend that Pete is now married to and happily married and has a couple of kids. So if that doesn't speak to how strong football is, I don't know what does.
Pete, I know that was a lot to take in right there, and I know you sent your wife all the way to Germany to be ready for the Onalaska Hilltoppers this Friday night. So, your take on what Tom just had to say, and then a little bit about your team and what you saw against Lodi.
Yeah, I mean, I figured if we were going to be playing for keeps here, I wanted to make sure she was out of the jurisdiction so I could keep that most important prize that I had. So won it fair and square back in the day. That's just how it works. And, we'll see how the game turns out tonight. I've talked to my quarterback. He's been talking about wanting to be able to get this one and not let Yashinsky get one on me. I says, don't worry about it, buddy. I won the big game. We got that taken care of. This one's just football. So. It's going to be a good experience. As far as Lodi is concerned, I can actually echo a lot of the stuff, even though the scores weren't very similar. I can echo a lot of the stuff that Coach Yashinsky was saying. You go back and you look at the film, and we're looking at 4 to 6 snaps in that first half that we execute a little differently. We make a different read. We secure a punt. We do those things. We're looking at a much more competitive game in that first half. Now, that being said, I don't know how the second half turns out in that game because, as Tom said, those players from Lodi, coaches have been there forever. The names have stayed the same, but they seem to be getting bigger and bigger with every generation. I've coached here in McFarland for a while. We've played Lodi on and off probably the last 10 or 15 years. And, they've continued to develop as a program and just made some great strides. And they're so schematically sound. They're so well coached. You're not going to get a lot of open layups against them, so to speak. So it's tough to have to move the ball continuously down the field against a team that's that talented and that well coached.
You mentioned your quarterback, Cooper Kennedy. He's back. He has experience there. And tell us a little bit about him and his style and what you like about him.
I can tell you the Lodi game is not indicative of the Cooper Kennedy that you'll see this season. We've talked about what went wrong in that game. We've talked about where we can work this week. This is an incredibly talented kid. This is a kid that has been bouncing back all week. He puts in the time in the offseason. He's trying to get teammates around to throw the ball in the summer. He's just trying to be active. He wants to lead. He wants to learn. Incredibly coachable. And he's made some throws already this camp from the week leading into this and summer camp and all of that, where I just look at the other coaches and I just say, how do you defend that? When he puts a ball right there, what are you going to do, And he's really worked on his athleticism. He's become a much better runner. He's going to be really, really bright future here for us in McFarland.
I think he's got his favorite target back too, and Dayton Gillen, right? And then is it Chase Quell in the backfield? That's that experience as well.
Yeah, both those guys, incredibly tough guys, both playing on both ends of the ball for us. Chase is one of 3 running backs who we've been using in that backfield. Talented guys. They all bring something a little bit different to the game, a little bit different to the offense. He's gotten so good at just understanding what we're looking for offensively, being able to help out in the backfield when we have some younger guys around there as well. And then Dayton Gillen is he's a freak, man. I don't know how else to really explain that. He's a special kid, can go ahead and make plays that aren't supposed to be plays. Incredibly athletic. He was a first-team all-conference, I believe, for us last year in the Rock, and just really a great playmaker for us on both ends of the ball.
Let's lighten things up a little bit here. You guys were college roommates. I obviously the fact that you stole Tom's girlfriend and married her, I give you credit for that. Tom's doing pretty good nowadays. Jana's a wonderful woman, so I just want to make sure that we bring that up as well. But some of the memories that you guys have, and who is better at video games? Because I know you guys had to play some video games back.
Oh, it was for sure me. I put way more time in it than Pete did.
Yeah, so he mentioned how we coached together for 1 year at lacrosse. He failed to mention that after that, I continued coaching and was not able to quite put in as much of that time. But in the off season, I was definitely leaning more towards the cooperative games when I was rolling with Tom, so that I could just ride the coattails of his success.
And that was it. We never really we didn't play against each other ever. Like everything that we played was co-op. Like we played college hoops 2K8 and played, we played more seasons than I want to admit on an interview together on that game, because it was like 34 game seasons, and we played 5 or 6 seasons of that game. Played a little bit of Madden. We actually didn't play much football together because for us that wasn't really that much fun. One, the game is nowhere near realistic. 2, as coaches, you can't have both of us like on the same game playing on the same team. There's too much conflicting strategies and stuff. We liked Army of Two. That one we ran through that one. I think you came to lacrosse for a weekend one time, even when you were with Katie, just so we could play that game.
Well, you guys realize you have to go against each other though tonight, right? But you're coaching. You're not.
But it's interesting. Everybody's got that friend that they grew up with, right? He likes to kind of run his mouth, pick fights, and then he stands next to his real big buddy, and he has to deal with it. Like, I'm that friend, all right? So I've caused this whole deal without even trying to, and now I make Coach Hellenbrand, our D coordinator, he's got to deal with Yashinsky, and I just get to watch those two go at it and see if I can get a first down at some point.
That's the interesting part about this is, like, we're going against each other tonight, but I call the offense, and outside of telling Bushman, just make sure he doesn't complete double pass on us. Like outside of that, we don't, like I'm not calling the defense, he's not calling the defense. So it's more of a chess match where we're both looking at the other guy's board, just kind of seeing like, hey, how are you doing against your guy? Because I got Hellenbrand on the other side, and he's got Bushman that he's going against. So, but it's going to be a fun one.
Well, you guys are watching film, so they can see what you do. But I mean, he knows your tendencies a little bit. Is Pete going to be, working with his D coordinator there to shut you down, or what?
Pete will have to answer that one. He's not much of a defensive mind, I'll tell you that.
I'm a very astute binder holder, so I have the plays that Coach Hellenbrand has showed me, and I show them to the scout team, and that's the extent of what I do in terms of defensive prep. When you don't get a whole lot of first downs and you actually throw a touchdown the other way on offense, you kind of stay in your lane and try to find a way to get things going with your crew. And I did tell Coach Hellenbrand, our D coordinator, I said, this will be the one game where I actually watch a few defensive snaps. I'm not going to tell him who I'm rooting for, but I'm just going to watch him and try to admire a couple of snaps there in between series. So Pete's
had the joy of being an assistant coach his entire life. where he's only had to worry about offense, and he's never even had to think about it because that was somebody else's job. Whereas head coach, sometimes you gotta go both ways. You gotta stick your nose in the other room once in a while. But Pete's I don't know if he's ever talked anything defensively except about how to beat something. In the time the 14 years we've known each other, he's never schemed up a defense to beat something. He's only schemed up to beat a defense.
Well, he's been a basketball coach for 5 years. Are you a head coach, Pete, or assistant?
I was the head girls coach for 5 years. I've done
There you go.
I was an assistant varsity boys coach as well. And ironically enough, when I switch gears and go to the basketball world, I'm all about defense. I coach a matchup zone that I've really worked on developing. I'm all about just being able to get rotations and all of that. Most of my teams haven't been able to find a way to score the ball, but it's the shift in lanes there, where on football I'm just all about going ahead and getting some points, and in basketball just trying to play some D. So
what you're saying is you just never fully transitioned from basketball season in that first game.
that's right. I'm working on getting into the offensive mindset again here. So hopefully with another week, we can kind of get that going, and it's one first down at a time, and hopefully Bushman's kind enough to give me one. So.
Well, we got to wrap things up before kickoff here. Any final words between you two before the battle ensues?
It's just going to be a fun one. This is one I've been looking forward to for a couple of years since we signed it. It almost happened in the playoff a couple of years back, but because of seeding things, we were a seed off. But no, I'm looking forward to it.
All right, go ahead, Pete.
It's going to be a ton of fun. I just hope Coach Hellenbrand can slow them down initially here. If they get momentum going, that offense can be lights out there, Nana.
Onalaska, McFarland, it's up next here on the Cooley Region Sports Network.